Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal are in front.
Post-match podcast takes a day off analyzing the football as we go a full-hour retrospective on Showdown Mustafi. This is the Arsenal Vision Post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. We are not doing a full-hour podcast retrospective of Showdown Mustafi's Arsenal career, but we will probably touch on it ever so briefly as we prepare to analyze Manchester United 0, Arsenal 0. It was an interesting game and one that I am actually looking forward to breaking down, but given that we are recording this on deadline day, it would be remiss of us not to at least give a mention to the transfer window. So we will touch on the news ever so briefly, mainly because there's nothing super earth-shattering. And then we will break down the United game, and it's all coming thick and fast, he says disgustedly, as we play again tomorrow. Imagine, like, if I, as a podcaster, feel exhausted by the schedule, what must the players feel? But who cares about them? Along with me is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Pause My Pants. Pause.
Woohoo!
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
And Tim, you can find him on Twitter at Stoberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And mainly, you are here. And because you are here, I want to reiterate that we love you. And it is really the thrill of a lifetime to be able to talk with you, to you, around you, by you, at you, inside your ear holes. We love you for being here. And the community that you are a part of is special to us and certainly special to me as we all struggle through these difficult times. It's winter, it's lockdown, we're stuck in our homes, or, depending on where you live, maybe it's beautiful and sunny, and God bless you for that. But I know I have certainly found it trying, difficult times, and the community around this podcast, including the fine gentlemen on with me today, have been an important part of getting through it. So thank you for that. With that nonsense out of the way, let's get to something really important. And that is, Paul, what will be your enduring memory of Showdown Mustafi? His contract, going the way of many Arsenal contracts these days. They've smashed the giant cancel contract button on Edu's desk. It looks like he'll go to Schalke. We'll also maybe just gently touch on Willock and Maitland-Niles going out on loan. But Showdown Mustafi, a titan, a legend. You have a moment that sticks in the mind?
Yeah, what the fuck was that moment? Okay, that could describe a few of them. You know that?
Yeah, which one?
Slide. Yeah, I think it was early in his reign with Arteta, but and he just kind of settled down. We'd recovered from that early Chelsea game and his horror moment, the back pass. And maybe a game or two later than that, he comes flying in with the tackle from off screen, so you don't know who it is. You just see this guy come in as a blur.
Anyway, yeah.
I'm like, who the? And the commentator called him somebody else. I can't remember who it was because you couldn't tell. He came in so fast, so low, for no great reason, missed, and went out of, as I remember it, this might be a little exaggeration, went out of camera shot on the other side, and you're like, who the? What the? And it was like.
Was that part of the game where he had basically a 30 minutes where he just totally went berserk and everything he did was inexplicable? I mean, that could describe a lot of games too.
Possibly. No, I think he had settled down because I remember thinking, I was about to start banging my Skodran.
It was Spurs.
Spurs was it?
It was Spurs. Yeah, that's right. And am I right, Tim? Is that the one where he had that last 20 minutes or so that was just like unfathomably terrible? Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you have
it.
an enduring memory of Showdown Mustafi? One of the great moments that will stick in the mind.
Look, I don't want to get stuck into him. I'm sure he's a nice person, but I'm really glad he's gone. He's just a player. Like a lot of us, I just didn't have a lot of time for him as a player or time for him being in the team. And because you asked me that, and we all know what's going on, right? None of us are going to say, that header he scored against Cardiff City in August 2018, that's my standout moment. Like, we're fishing for the disaster moments, which says a lot. For me, the image that comes into my mind, I could have just as easily said the League Cup final.
That was one of mine, yep. At the halfway line with Sergio Aguero?
Yeah, but mine is that Palace game, which just saying that Palace game, you know which one I mean, where Emery rotates the team, and actually I don't think that was necessarily as terrible a decision as people remember it, but we'd really got back into the game, we'd just equalised, we were well on top, and he does that thing where he leaves the ball for Bernd Leno, despite it really doesn't look like he got a shout. Excuse me, and then literally choked
you're
up.
You're all broken.
I was upset at losing top 4 too, Tim. But this is ancient history, man. I mean, surely you're over it by now.
Literally choked up.
Let it go, man. Let it go.
Choked with rage. But for me, what put the image that I remember is not so much Zaha scoring; it's Mustafi then blaming Leno for it, and that's what I had a real problem with. And that's a large part of the reason I had a big problem with him as a player, really.
Yeah, there's a moment I remember too where those were the two I was going to pick: Sergio Aguero at the halfway line and Zaha in the Palace game, which cost us top 4. One of many things that cost us top 4. To be fair, I think there might have been a Xhaka red card along the way there too. Not to bring that up unnecessarily, but or a penalty, whatever it was. I think there's one, and I can't remember the game it was, but where I knew we were in trouble with this player because there's a winger attacking the space in front of him, and he's got no one really behind him and players flowing back. So all he has to do is like sort of stand his ground, and he put in this like absurd lunging leg that he knew couldn't get anywhere and then fell on the ground to take himself out of the play. And I think the thing that bothered me about his defending, look, he was great in the air, seems like a lovely guy, apparently a very nice, intelligent guy. But the thing that bothered me is all too often his career was punctuated by decisions to take himself out of the play early and leave it to his teammates, not to ride the challenge, make the hard yards, do what it took to try to snuff out the danger, but just dive in recklessly and knowing that whether he gets there or not, he's out of the play and it's not his responsibility anymore. I hated that. So, Clive, we're getting ready to say goodbye to this guy. It's not really your style to want to pick a terrible moment, but certainly feel free to pick your favorite Mustafi moment if you want. But what I have left for you then is to maybe weigh in on something I imagine you're more interested in, which is the loan departures of Joe Willock and Ainsley Maitland-Niles, if you wish.
Yeah, loads of Mustafi moments. There's a Spurs one, wasn't there, when he shoved Kane in the back, gave the penalty away. Remember that game? I just remember that anyway, and it's just like, oh god. Hey, look, we shouldn't have bought him in the first place. I'm not up for 5'10", centre halves.
You know what I will say, Clive? I have genuinely worried about the health and well-being of Andrew of Arsblog during Mustafi's time. I mean, He is someone who I think was deeply, deeply troubled by this guy, a guy who played center back himself, albeit at a different level. But just, I think he was personally quite troubled.
Probably at the same level.
Yeah, fair point. Who played it at a higher level, I should say. No, but I mean, he seemed deeply, deeply troubled by the player. So I'm happy for his emotional well-being.
Apoplectic is the word that comes to mind.
Yes,
for
exactly.
Andrew.
Mm-hmm. Incandescent. But so, Clive, I mean, certainly feel free to punctuate the Mustafi career there and move on to the Nelson and, Willock and Maitland-Niles moves. And I don't actually believe there's a Nelson move that's going to come to fruition. But if there is, correct me.
As I was saying, I don't like 5 foot centre halves unless their name is Cannavaro, right? So simple as that. It looks as though, obviously, Willock going to Newcastle and Maitland-Niles potentially going to West Brom as we are recording. These things can change in a tweet. The Willock to Newcastle one is interesting. They had a decent result the weekend and they played the ex-Arsenal boy, I forgot his name was, the ex-Arsenal boy midfield and with, oh crikey, I forgot his name. What's the guy who played for Arsenal in centre mid?
Which one? We had several. Was it? There was a Bartley or something. I don't know.
That's it. Hayden. Remember Hayden?
There you go.
Yeah, remember Hayden? And so they played Hayden and Shelby in midfield, and they're sort of using Almiron in there as almost like a diamond, right? So there's room for him to go in there with Jeff Hendrick and playing that midfield and sort of getting behind, Callum Wilson. So that looks like a good move for him. They're lacking a sort of their breakaway sort of centre mid, breaks into the box. So yeah, that makes sense because not really scoring much from midfield, not scoring much full stop. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is the complex discussion. Now, I think throughout the day, Arsenal have decided that he's not going to Leicester. They've lost Dennis Pratt and Ndidi through injury. Leicester would probably like him. He's one of their sprinty type midfielders. And they've got 3 really good fullbacks we know about. But potentially he can be a fullback cover as well. I mean, what squad wouldn't like a player that can play for 100 positions, right? So, but Arsenal see, them as a competitor, so they don't want to go there. I just read that Southampton were looking at him, and they were looking at him option to buy, and Arsenal were not against that. That's interesting. They've got a couple of decent fullbacks as well. Carl Walker-Peters they like. Bertrand, I think they want to keep. I'm not sure if they're going to keep him or want to keep him at that price. They've got a young kid they just sent out on loan to Birmingham or Swansea, not too sure which one. And so they've got a bit of backup there. And so, again, centre midfield, they've got Romeo and Ward-Prowse. So I think it's a bit of a challenge, but potentially it could be something that would work for him, but he doesn't want to do it. So he's going to want to go to West Brom and play in centre midfield. There's an issue here, isn't there? I also see him as a fullback. He sees himself as a centre midfielder. He's backing himself. He's not taking the transfer. I want to go and put myself in a shop window at West Brom and watch the ball go over my head like Andy Murray playing tennis, right? One side to the other, playing for Big Sam. So it's going to be interesting what he does. We'll take him out of the comfort zone of the Colney crash and get him out there. Maybe he'll realise that he should have tried a bit harder back at Arsenal, but who knows, right? It's a complex discussion. People will say he hasn't been given enough time. He hasn't given enough time in centre midfield. Not been given enough time on his right foot. I think this is an internal issue that we can all opine on based on the little snippets we get. But in the end, I think he sees his future elsewhere, and I think the club are okay with that. And that is a shame because he's one of ours and he's not fully developed, in my opinion. And that's a shame, but you can't keep them all. And we've all said that. And so you can't pick and choose when you feel about that, whether you think a player's got potential or not. It's a shame because I think he does some things really, really to a high level. And when you have a player that can do things to a really high level, you have to build around that. But if you've got, illusions of grandeur or people in your ear telling you you're this, you're that, and people saying you need to get in the England squad, how about booting a 29-year-old Cedric out of the team? How about focusing on that first? That's what I would be saying to him. And he hasn't quite done that well enough. So he's taking his chances elsewhere. And I wish him the best if he does go. I wish him the best. But I do feel a little bit of a tinge of regret.
Yeah. I think with both Willock and Maitland-Niles, you have the case of players who clearly are skillful and have talents, but it is unclear how to deploy them most effectively. And they seem unable to sort of unlock their talents on the pitch in a way that makes them it's hard for me to say like a good player, right? Like skillful and talented people who don't really combine their skills in a way that make them a good contributor to a team because they don't really have a position where they excel. I mean, Maitland-Niles has some great one-on-one individual defending, but maybe has had trouble influencing the game in the attacking half as a fullback. I don't think his passing is clean enough to be in central midfield, but we'll find out. I think the best thing that can happen to either of these players on loan is that they establish a position that they can be effective at consistently. If that happens, Arsenal can decide whether they have a future at this level, but for their careers, I think it has to be clearer what they are. You said, Clive, who wouldn't love to have a player that can play 5 positions? The problem is, who would love to have a player who can play 5 positions, but none of them at a good level? You know what I mean? None of them at the high enough level. Now, maybe it's high enough for clubs of this stature,
It could have been. They could have partially blocked each other, actually, because Willock's had some centre midfield minutes that I think Maitland-Niles could have had. And that's a shame, right? But here's what it is. It's football. I'm not overly concerned about it. As long as they forge their careers, having players sitting there doing nothing is a much bigger issue for me. Yeah,
that's fair enough. So let's talk about the United game. And I have been searching my Twitter timeline to find the comment someone made to me that I think summed this up perfectly. Because it was a really interesting game, and I think it was sort of a tough game to analyze. And then I said, I thought we played well, but it's small margins. And that was the way I summarized it, and someone summarized it better, and I am desperately trying to find this right now because I want to credit them, and I will credit them at some point in this podcast because I will find it. But basically what they said is, we could have won the game 2-0. We could have lost the game 2-0, but at least we're not playing like assholes anymore, and I'm here for it. And I think that's right. I think we had the balance of the play and the better attacking moves and the more dangerous play generally, and they probably had the best chances of the game. And so depending on how you want to look at football, if you say, well, whoever had the best chances deserved to win, then maybe it's their game. If you want to say whoever played the best deserved to win, I certainly think that was us. But, Paul, this is a game that I don't think you can view any other way than through the lens of our three best players not being out there. And I don't think it is wrong to call Aubameyang, Xhaka, and Tierney our three best players at the moment. So, I think a lot of credit is deserved to the team being able to go out and just sort of play the football we've been playing and play it effectively. So let's talk, I think, first and foremost about the Pepe performance. For me, he is starting to really show a little bit of what he can do more consistently, showing that he can be a player who influences the game more regularly. And I think that this is a performance where, absent Aubameyang, absent Xhaka, obviously, Martinelli still just coming back from injury and maybe not able to influence the game as much as you might like. I thought Pepe was really influential here and showed a lot of personality and a lot of good, effective attacking moves that maybe position him to be regularly in the team. So do you think that if you had to pick out a player to sort of start the conversation with, Pepe is as good as any?
He's as good as any, yeah. He's just intriguing because we've been all trying to work out what the Pepe problem is. And it's multifactorial, I guess you would say. It's probably the 4 or 5 things we would all list. But for me, the first thing that comes to mind is he deserved the right to play with a 10, because we were all discussing, we got Smith Rowe in the team, we played Chelsea, West Brom, etc., and we were playing this great football, and we were saying, so what's the bloody problem with Pepe, right? Look at these players, look at how they can play. So how come Pepe sucks? And really, we were maybe partly diagnosing the wrong illness, in that he also deserves to play in an attack that's functional, that has a 10, where we're creating some chaos in their back line, because for all the reasons we would have identified, he has his issues. He tries to take on too many players. He's kind of in a greedy phase at the moment because he's probably trying to prove his point that he's actually an okay player when he gets minutes on the pitch, and he doesn't get enough minutes on the pitch. And he didn't seem to be doing all of his work. And yet now he's had 2 important games in a row, Southampton and United, both games in which we faced a dangerous foe who could hurt you, and where his work rate was really important. And in one case, he's partnered on the left with Cedric against Southampton, and he's one of our most pressing players, and he's tracking back in this game against United. He does all his work on that side, on the right-hand side there. And it just makes you think, how does this turn around so quickly with a player where you're like, we have all these problems and then we don't. And we see this with other players, how quickly things can turn around when the context changes. So once again, we play with the 10. And I thought Smith Rowe, another workman-like performance rather than the eye-catching video you could put together afterwards. Shame, really. But this one and the Southampton one, I mean, it's all work rate with him. He looked like he was shagged at 70 or so minutes, and then I think he saw Odegaard warming up on the touchline, so he starts running around a bit more, maybe to enjoy his last few minutes or to try and keep the wolf from the door.
Yeah, I thought he looked totally shattered, but when he was coming off, yeah.
Yeah, but our work rate here. So we talked about pressing against Southampton. So in the final third against Southampton, we had 60 pressures in our attacking third. In this game, it was still a pretty pressuring game, but not to the same levels. It was 40 pressures in the final third, still way above our average, which is about 30. And so, but you saw Smith Rowe just running the length of the pitch time and time again. And, Lacazette and Pepe did their work. But that chaos, the fact that we didn't have the game all to ourselves, we didn't have them pinned down, the fact that they actually had more of the possession, and that they're a bit chaotic themselves defensively at times. This was a good game for Pepe, and he did a lot of things that opened them up for us. The challenge for him going forward is, how does he get in the team when Aubameyang's back and Saka's fit? And we're trying to work out how to get Smith Rowe and and Odegaard on the pitch, or et cetera, et cetera. But these are good problems. If he builds confidence with the manager, then instead of getting 10 minutes, he'll get 30, 35 minutes, and we'll do more rotation. And as we've seen, Xhaka can't play every game. And he's definitely coming up the pecking order. It's just not easy to become a starter when you have Saka and Alba who need to start. But stuff happens. So no, he's been. It's a revelation and so important to us, regardless of what his future with the club is. But I don't think we're going to easily shift him in the summer for real money. So it's important how this turns out, both for playing for us and to give us options, of course. If he starts lighting it up, all things become possible. But maybe we just keep him because he's really good. He's a finisher. We can all see that. His misses are always good, almost always good misses.
Yeah. And I think, look, the issue for me right now is that there's just so many games coming up that are important. I think the league feels fairly important again. Some people talking about top 4, and I think that's very premature, but I certainly think top 6 is absolutely available to us. And the Europa League. At least
we can dream again, right? I mean, that's the fact that you stare at the table and you start saying, well, if these guys did this and these guys did that, at least we can dream that we can flirt with top 4. We can't.
Put ourselves back into a position where the league is interesting enough again to not just sort of make it an experimental place where we, bide our time between Europa League fixtures. So, but with the Europa League coming back and that feeling extremely urgent, there are going to be opportunities for a lot of different players to play. I think what we are seeing, I've just been reading a lot of analysis about pressing this season and about how players are coping. And it does seem to be everybody's conclusion, everybody's analysis that the players are just extremely wiped out right now and, more fatigued than usual. And I think the team, ordinarily I'm a believer that, the teams that win use their squad less. If you look at the teams that usually win titles, their most important players play 38 games, play 36 games, 37 games. I think there's going to be a need to use the squad more effectively. And we're in a position, weirdly now, to kind of do it in positions that maybe we didn't think we would be able to do it. Tim, one of the big talking points in this game, though, is definitely the Martinelli situation, because I just feel we have become so short-term in the way we want to evaluate players. It's not just a few games ago we were on this podcast saying, is it as simple? Can you explain our resurgence as simply as Martinelli coming back and the energy he's brought back to the club? Like, he looked like a dynamo. It was never going to be linear. This is a guy who lost almost a year of his career at 18. That can be like starting over. And so it was never going to be sort of a linear development back to his absolute best. And this was a game where he struggled. I mean, he had absolutely extraordinary defensive intervention, the header to take the ball away from Rashford in a position that could have very easily been a goal. And that's almost like a goal, so I don't want to diminish it. But he gets taken off at halftime for Willian. A move that, certainly didn't delight most of the Twitter people that I follow. Real quick, because I think it's so important when you use somebody else's brilliance that you reference it. I want to thank Jeff at JM_Arsenal for the quote. There are days we win that game 2-0. There are days we lose that game 2-0, but we don't play like assholes anymore, and I'm here for it. So thanks, Jeff, because I totally think that's right. How do you react to the Martinelli situation in light of the fact that Arteta said it was tactical? That there seemed to be some suggestion that they wanted him to stay up the pitch more. Maybe he wasn't positionally really doing exactly what they wanted, and Willian coming on. And just in general, sort of the expectations we can have about Martinelli returning to the kind of form we think he's capable of.
That for me.
Yeah. Sorry, I saw you go from mute to unmute, so I thought you may have been wondering. But yes, that is for you indeed.
Yeah, sure. So with Martinelli, I think the thing is, I think this is a conversation we'll probably end up having more as the weeks go by, is that Arteta's still never really figured out a way to use him. We've used him a few times without Arteta, while Arteta's been here. Like all of Martinelli's best games have been without Aubameyang, right? And I appreciate Aubameyang wasn't playing in this game. But in this game, weirdly, well, no, I was going to say Pepe was like the Aubameyang. He kind of was in a sense, because Pepe has 4 shots, right? Creates 3 chances. I'm not sure Aubameyang would create 3 chances, but 4 shots. He was our shot heavy guy. And I agree, Pepe played really well. In this game, I think the thing is with Martinelli, I think where he's probably got some development to go is in his kind of tactical appreciation of games. I don't think he's quite there yet. I think he's a very, he's a presser. He's a kind of scurry all over the place, go to the ball, make runs kind of player. And I really, really don't mean that pejoratively, because I think that's the player Alexis Sanchez was. And I was absolutely fine with that because he did that to the elite level. And ultimately, I think we're kind of asking Martinelli to do what Aubameyang usually does, but it's not that simple. Because Martinelli, he's a low touch player and he's a good finisher, but he's not the same as Aubameyang. And ultimately, Aubameyang's presence does give Arsenal a problem. Frankly, it gives Arsenal some problems in that he can't combine, he can't really dribble and beat players. That's not who he is. It's just he scores so many goals that it kind of doesn't matter.
It's a really pesky quality that he's got. It's frustrating.
Yeah. I wrote something last week where I compared it, to that Japanese movie Battle Royale, where all these kids go onto an island and have to fight to the death, and they're all given a random weapon, and some of them get like a bazooka and some of them get like a spoon. And it's a bit like Aubameyang is kind of a weak footballer in many ways, but he's got a bazooka, so who cares? It's and Martinelli's not quite there, but I don't think that's who Martinelli is either. I see him as much more of like a Suarez, Sanchez type, that kind of busy press, Harry. That chance he creates in the first, or nearly creates for Lacazette in the first half, which would have been brilliant, by the way, because he comes inside, beats two players, and does that very Sanchez-esque lofted ball to the back post, and it's just a little bit too much on it for Lacazette. But I think he's got some tactical development to go, which would make a hell of a lot of sense, because the Brazilian fourth division, not a tactical, not a hot pot of tactical innovation, frankly. So it would make total sense that he perhaps hasn't got the total tactical nuances that Arteta really wants. And like I say, I don't think Aubameyang has either really, but he scores so many goals as to not make it a problem. And with Martinelli at the moment, I've said this on a few podcasts now. I think at the moment, while he's coming up to speed, his job should be much more as an impact sub. I think when games are a little bit unstructured, when defences are tired and things like that, I think that's really when we should be looking at using him at the moment. Maybe the plan was I'm sure the plan was that Martinelli was not going to play 90 minutes in this game. It might have been 60 minutes, but Arteta saw a reason to make the change earlier than that and put on Willian. And I completely agree with what Paul said on the instant reaction pod. That worked. I can't tell you exactly why it worked, or I can't entirely put it down to Willian, but it worked somehow. It changed the balance of the team, maybe because he's a more touch-heavy player and he gave us a bit more technical security. Martinelli as a starter was one of the few in the starting lineup. I thought, I'm a bit surprised by that, and I'm not sure about that. I'm just not quite sure he's at the starting against Man United stage yet. In terms of his recovery, but ultimately, Elliot, I still think that Martinelli will be a centre forward one day. Yeah. I really, really do. I'm not necessarily saying that Arsenal should do that now, and I think if Arsenal did it now, it would still take him 3, 4, 5 games to really get into it. A bit like when we first moved Van Persie to a lone striker, and it took him 4 or 5 games to really get it. It might take Martinelli even longer than that, but ultimately for his development, I really see him there one day. Maybe one day in a couple of years, when we wave goodbye to Aubameyang and hopefully Martinelli's still here at that point, maybe that's the point we go, right, now you're a centre forward. But that's what I see him as, I think, just because his play is quite unstructured, but unstructured in a good way. Like Suarez's play is unstructured, like Sanchez's play is unstructured. He brings that kind of that energy and that chaos. I'm still not sure that Arteta really knows how to harness a player like that, because he doesn't want. I don't think he really wants unstructured or chaotic players, for better or for worse. So we'll see. But I still have a nagging, I'm not going to call it doubt necessarily, but I still have this thing in the back of my mind where I'm not entirely sure how Arteta uses this player to get the best out of him.
Yeah, I mean the the interesting thing is it kind of depends on Lacazette to some extent, but I think Lacazette probably will not be renewed. I think it'd be strange to renew him. And you've got Aubameyang on a big contract for several years. You now clearly have wide options that you want to develop. I mean, Xhaka looks like a star in the making, an absolute star. I think Pepe has put himself right back in the frame for being an important starting player, or certainly potentially resurrecting his Arsenal career and getting right back into the first choice wide forward debate. That means you could start to shift to an Aubameyang center forward situation, which I think is more analogous to using Martinelli there. And if you play that way, you know, going into like a next season, not to just fast forward to next season off the United game, but Martinelli could be an option out wide. So you'd have Pepe, Xhaka, Martinelli as wide options, Aubameyang as your center forward, but Martinelli as a center forward option. You're probably one player light there, but it looks to me roughly like that works. And I think it works better with a number 10 because you don't necessarily need that number 9 to drop in as much. Clive, you have a thought on Martinelli? Because then I guess that transitions us nicely to talking about Lacazette, talking about the sort of chances we create in this game. I just want to make one quick point before you continue, Clive, and just ask generally the group what you think of this. If Granit Xhaka makes a meal of that Bruno Fernandes tackle, like if he goes down holding himself hurt, rolling around, if we surround the ref, you do all the dark art stuff, is there a chance that's a red card? Does anybody think that that could be under VAR if Xhaka really plays it up a red card? Because I look, I'm never going to criticize a player for not. It's red possible, right? It's a red eligible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. Look, I'm not criticizing Xhaka. You can't criticize a player for being honest and just getting up and carrying on. But that's one of those cases where you say there might have been something there because that's a nasty challenge. It studs up into the back of his calf. I mean, he knows what he's doing.
And it was in reaction to an incident just before then. Yeah. So if the referee had a yellow carded him, then VAR looks at it, then he's in trouble. The referee didn't even yellow card him. And so he put him in an awkward situation, right? So they're not you can't give a yellow card via VAR. So it just had to be a red. And I don't think they were going to go, you've not even booked him, and give him a straight red. Do you know what I mean? Unless he missed it. So I think it's just unfortunate, but that's a player that definitely I don't like. I didn't realise I didn't like him until this game was going. And I thought, I don't like you anymore. And
he looks like a rodent, doesn't he?
I tweeted out, please someone just kick him and kick him a lot, right? Because he obviously can be rattled. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan of him. He was nice when I was watching from previously from afar and seeing his impact, but now seeing a bit closer up, he's not for me, not at all.
Yeah. You know, it is an interesting game when you look at the chances we had. You know, we took 17 shots. And I found myself thinking Lacazette had a pretty good game, Clive. And yet, when you look at it, he has one shot from open play and the one shot from the free kick. Now, the free kick could have won us the game. He hits the crossbar, so credit to him. He also created no chances. And I think this is one of those things that I'm constantly torn about with Lacazette because I'm watching him and I think, oh, he's playing well. He's doing a lot of stuff. And then you realize, like, your number 9 didn't really have any open play goal scoring chances, didn't create any open play goal scoring chances. So I think that whole situation is really up in the air with Aubameyang, you know, coming back soon. But how did you feel about the way the front line played in general? I mean, I know you wanted to talk about Martinelli. You can talk about Lacazette's performance in a game where, you know, I think he flashed some things that are encouraging, but ultimately isn't doing some of the stuff you kind of need a striker to do. How do you feel about that situation? Because right now, between Aubameyang, Xhaka, Pepe, Lacazette, you know, there's a lot of players making a case for themselves to be starting regularly.
Yeah, so this game had a sort of different context. It was more of a defensive game, and also worked very hard to stay in a tight, compact unit and then break out from that unit, right? So they were using, I think the plan was to use Pepe and Martinelli to break out early, go high. Once we get a semblance of possession, go. You know what I mean? And as you guys alluded to, maybe that's why Martinelli was too deep. He's too conscientious. He chases the ball a little bit. He wants to help out, and we were actually glad for some of his helping out. But on one chance, when he saved Rashford, he did bail Cedric out, who, was too square on, didn't open his body out on a couple of occasions, and basically bailed him out. But on one of those occasions, when he actually, on the chance before, when Rashford got it and Leno came out and Martinelli sprayed it back in, it was Martinelli that got dispossessed outside his own D. And that's not really his game, running it out from defensive areas. They want him high, running in behind defences. So my coaching message to Martinelli would be, you have to work a lot harder on your availability. By that, I mean just making sure people can see you. You're available for the ball consistently. I thought he was static on the touchline a little bit and didn't do enough aggressive, proactive running so you could be found. And Xhaka would have found him. He's in that mode at the moment. So he's got to work a bit harder on his availability before we can see his talent. I think he received 9 passes in this game, and that's not enough for a talent of like that. I don't believe he's a particularly high touch player, but I don't believe he's a low touch player neither. I think he's a very busy player. I sort of, in the way he moves and the way he runs, I'm going to say this, and I hope he doesn't get me too much kicking, but he almost reminds me of a Danny Ings in his movement. He's very sprinty, quite crouched, and he's very dynamic in his sideways movements from first to the ball. And he could develop into a Danny Ings type centre forward, but right now at 18, 19, I think he's a wide player, a hard-working wide player, but he has to work more on his movement to fit with the tactics, shall we say. On this day, we want him to go long, and he didn't do it. Can you think of a time when he went long in this game, went in behind? I can't think of one.
That's a good point.
He wants to come and get it, but you can't just play your game. You got to play what we want you to play. The Pepe, when he plays on that side, he went long. A Banyang, when he plays on that side, he goes long. We've got a distributing fullback. We've got Xhaka in behind the left-hand side. We need you to stretch in behind Wan-Bissaka because he's stupid. Right, so you've got to do this. And I don't think he did on the day. And I'm just assuming that's what the tactical message was. I'm not saying Willian he's a sprinter in behind, but immediately he came on and drove them back. Couple of dribbles straight in, up to that point. Suddenly they're back edge of their box. And we dominated territorially just after half-time because we were positioned higher up the pitch. And it wasn't just the Martinelli thing, but I think if you're looking for a reason as to why he got hooked, that may have been it. On Lacazette, again, just into the context of the game, it was a defensive game, and Lacazette's, you've got a view of your centre-forward there, absolutely right. But in this game, we need Lacazette to be this guy because we needed to collapse into their midfield, sneak up behind Pogba, sneak up behind Fred, make sure they couldn't dominate those central areas. And Lacazette's a big part of that, to nibble from the front end. And we use Smith Rowe to vacate into wide areas and create like a wide diamond either side or connection or wide triangle. So we get a rat attack going in wide areas. So we need Lacazette to play almost like a 10 rather than 9 and come back in and bite. So it was just the day. I did think sometimes he was a bit deep and I did want to get out the pitch, but he is what he is. But I thought for this game, within the context of this game, I thought he did a decent job.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too, Clive, and maybe this, you talked about how he didn't go long, he didn't stay up the pitch, and that was something that Willian did. You know what I wonder? Sometimes we think about it in terms of how we want to hurt them with the ball, but I wonder if it was also part of what we wanted to do when we lost the ball. Because if we were going to play up the pitch and get the ball, into their half, if we were going to have Partey trying to break lines and, trying to get the ball into Maitland-Niles between the lines, Maitland-Niles, shows you where my head is right now, Smith Rowe between the lines, whatever the case may be, one of the reasons you want your forward to go long is because it lets you trigger a press easier when you lose it. You know what I mean? If Martinelli drops back to come for the ball, then he's not in a position to necessarily press, and he can be a very good pressing player. He's got a good engine. He's got a good ability to close down space. And so, Paul, I wonder, because in the second half, I felt we pressed them really effectively. I thought that was when there was a period there, I think it was 8 or 9 minutes in the second half where we had like 80% possession because they couldn't play out.
Yeah.
And I wonder if some of that is, again, just Willian being up the pitch, doing what he was instructed a little more, allowing us to trigger our press. So do you think that that's all tied in together, that wanting those forwards in certain positions allows you to turn on that counter press a little more easily when you lose the ball? Because it definitely looked like we were doing it more to start the second half, and I thought it led to our best period of the game.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. If you actually look at Willian's, like if you go across the stats for the various things, just busyness, Willian's very, very busy for a guy who's only on half a match. So again, I'm still not quite sure why it was so significant, but we definitely maintained a level of control and interplay in the team, especially in we started fast in the second half. And then we had a long period really from pretty much the start of the second half through to maybe, 60, 70 minutes, where I think we started to flag a little bit at that point, where we were doing the pushing. We were having our attacking moments with Pepe, with Lacazette. We were getting our free kicks up the pitch. Smith Rowe was getting involved, and there was just some connective tissue there that where Willian was part of it, even if he wasn't the eye-catching part of it. He was obviously standing in the right spot, forming triangles, understood the game plan. I mean, obviously there's something going on between him and Arteta that's not translating from the practice pitch into the game situations, because he keeps sticking with them. And unless there's some kind of blackmail arrangement or some other thing, there's something about Willian he gets what it is Arteta is trying to do, even if it hasn't been realised on the pitch. And again, Willian is a guy, I'm not saying he hasn't played with Smith Rowe on the pitch or with the 10 on the pitch, but, almost every one of our players who's been bad has started to look good recently. The team's playing better. We're playing with the 10. We're knocking it around. And yes, he's had a couple of shots to play well and didn't. But, here he had a nice 45 minutes where now it's against United, so you're always going to get your look. I mean, I think they were pretty proactive in the second half, United, but I actually think their busier, more proactive, more possession-oriented half was the first half. And in the second half, we really kind of came into it, especially early on, and Willian and the boys working the plan and knocking it around and holding their shape and their pattern. I felt pretty good about our second half for most of it. And then every now and then I think we had 2 Cavani moments and you're like, shit your pants. But then that's also how I remember Cavani for PSG. He's brilliant at getting into those positions, but confounding when he misses. I also think that one, he's 2 brilliant chances, but that one where he's laid on, where he's reaching behind him and almost scores. I mean, I don't think most people would have made that chance look like such an almost chance.
Paul, he's falling back and hits it on the full volley. It's through his own quality that he turns it into a chance. I think he does himself no credit there, right? Because by even making it into a chance, he gives himself the chance to look like he's screwed it up.
Yeah. Now there's the early one. That's a classic Cavani, right? I mean, he's beaten everybody in front of he's in front of the goal. Leno has gone past the post. And we're just wide open, and he Cavani's it, and he's like 1 out of 2 in those situations, and this was the 2, so that's good.
Where we got lucky there is that it goes between Leno and the post, because if it hits Leno, there's a chance that it goes back into the goal that way.
So, yeah, the second half is just, I think it's mostly very, very good, and unfortunately, those 2 Cavani chances. I mean, Rashford had a couple of chances too. One in particular where he dawdled for forever, and then another one where he should have laid it off to, I think, Cavani, and he dawdled too much on it. But outside of that's kind of how United win games while playing badly. I thought they were pretty good in this, but I thought we were stronger in the second half, I thought we were wasteful in the first half. I just thought there were 4, 5, 6, 7 passes that were stupid and didn't need to be lost, and I think somehow
the shots on the counterattack, both Partey and Lacazette took shots on the counter, and the Lacazette one was unforgivable. It's his one shot from open play, and all he has to do is slip in Martinelli in the left channel, and it's a really good goal scoring chance.
Yeah, and I just feel Arteta was clearly frustrated with the first half, and he had one change to make in his mind, and he kind of took it out on Martinelli a little bit. But hey, with Willian in the side, we held onto the ball in the second half and constructed play and got up the pitch, so all good. But he was busy. If you look at his stats, I don't know what he did, but he did a bit of everything.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, that is the thing that frustrated me, I think, in this game is we took 17 shots, and this is a game where if we took maybe a couple fewer, we would have made the extra pass. Well, then there would have been another shot to create a better chance. But you know what I mean, Tim? Like those two moments, Partey with the spectacular carry up the pitch, and then taking the shot from distance, and Lacazette taking the shot from the top of the box and counterattack when Martinelli's standing in acres of space. It's definitely the rare example of Arsenal being too quick to shoot when a better play was on. Do you think those were two pretty substantial moments where we could have created something a lot more dangerous?
Yeah, definitely. And I think really if you look at the balance of this game, I think Arsenal had, it was very 50-50, but Arsenal had more chances, and I'd count, situations as well as chances than United, but United had the clearer ones. And the decision making just wasn't quite there. And look, maybe if Aubameyang's playing, maybe if Saka is playing, either there is a different player available in a slightly different position and the decisions are better, or maybe a different player has the ball in those situations and those circumstances. So I don't think we can totally ignore the impact of two of the mainstays of our attack, like our first choice wingers were out effectively, and as well as one of our first choice fullbacks. So that's probably going to have an impact. And yeah, I think maybe we did just not quite make the right decisions in some of those circumstances. And I guess in terms of Pepe, actually, I wanted to just add a little bit on. I know we talked about him at the beginning of the podcast, but the thing I really liked about Pepe, so the things that don't surprise you about this Pepe performance, he has 4 shots and 3 chances created. And you think, yeah, even when I think he's played terribly, he kind of does that. But I think it's just the way he did the fundamentals this time, and in the Southampton game, the stuff like the ball recoveries, what he's done, which is really, and to your point earlier, Elliot, about how quickly we reevaluate players. Just 2-3 games ago, we were going, "Oh my God, Pepe's a bust. How do we get rid of him?" And very quickly, it's come to a stage where we were missing Aubameyang for this game, and a lot of people, myself included, were thinking, well, if Pepe plays like he did against Southampton, I don't really mind that. And if he takes 4 shots of the quality that he took in this game, that is absolutely fine. If he keeps taking shots like that at the rate of 3 or 4 a game, he will score every other game, I think. But for me, what's really pleasing is he's doing more of the fundamentals. He's he's going and getting his, and this is similar to what I felt about the Smith Rowe performance against Southampton. Like, if you can't make your entire game dependent on producing a goal or an assist unless you are unless you're Aguero, maybe even Aubameyang, and you do it at such a level that it's kind of okay. But go and get your 6 and 7 out of 10. Go and do the ball recoveries. Don't go and do the pressing. Don't fuck up stupid simple passes. Trap the ball when it comes to do that stuff. And none of us have any doubts that Pepe can pull off the other stuff. And yeah, in this scenario, possibly, I get the impression with Partey, he likes a shot, and that we might like his shooting less and less as time goes on. That he might have that
Granit Xhaka story.
Yeah, exactly, that early Xhaka tendency, which we entertained for far too long because he scored 2. Yeah, because he scored 2 blinders in his opening couple of months at the club. I think back-to-back, actually, at Hull and Nottingham Forest, and we were like, oh, this guy can shoot. And then about a year later, we were like, no, he can't really, can he? Those were outliers.
Yeah.
And I do get the impression that Partey has that in him, perhaps that slight impetuousness, which is not always terrible because a few of them will fly in as well. But yeah, and with Lacazette perhaps didn't make the right decision in that particular circumstance. But I don't think Lacazette will be here next season anyway, and it will probably be a different player making that particular decision.
Yeah, I will tell you this. Clive and I did the scouting video on Partey, and I can vouch for this from the video we watched. Partey has a right leg like a traction engine, and he can absolutely hammer them into the back of the net. Now you say, well, Xhaka can too, but you'd still rather he doesn't do that. But Yeah, I mean, I actually, the Partey one, I was sort of expecting him to hit that into the upper left corner at 1,000 miles an hour because I just know he can. The Lacazette one felt like it was less on, and he also tried to place it, which, from that distance I think is very difficult. Before I move on from you, Tim, just super, super quick, I think the conventional wisdom in this game, and Clive, I know you want to talk about this, so we'll get to this as well. I think the conventional wisdom in this game is that Xhaka was the better midfielder and that Partey had an off day. And we touched on this in the instant reaction pod, and I think this is so interesting in terms of how you evaluate football. Football is a moment's game. It's hard to remember every little thing that happens in a match because most of them are inconsequential. So you remember the big moments. Partey had some really bad giveaways in this game. And I think because those stand out, and because Xhaka had largely a very good game, I think he passed it like 97%, whereas Partey was 73%. Really bad from your central midfielder, let's be honest. But, I still feel that when it came to carrying the ball forward beyond players, pushing the play forward, first touch out of his feet, second touch forward, like the stuff we always praise Partey for, I still think some of our best movements forward into the attack were instigated by Partey. So I'm kind of curious how you evaluate this because I thought Xhaka was excellent. I'm not taking anything away from him. He had, one lunge in tackle that he missed that was kind of bad, and the rest of the game was very, very clean from him. But I still think if you're evaluating based on who did the more progressive stuff, I thought Partey was very good in this game driving us forward. He just was uncharacteristically sloppy, maybe doing a little too much. So how do you look at those midfield performances in terms of maybe slightly overweighting the passes Partey didn't complete?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that Partey's performance was eye-catching in the wrong respect is because he did a lot of good stuff before he did the bad thing, where he would carry it forward and you think, oh, here we go. Oh, no. It was almost like a Diaby-esque game from him. In a way, I seem to remember Abu Diaby doing a lot of that. You getting the ball on a dribble, getting you on the edge of the seat, and then just spanking it out of play under no pressure. And I think there was an element of that to Partey's game, and I think we've got to take into account obviously his level of fitness. He didn't last 90 minutes against Southampton the other night, and went off with cramp. So they're clearly still looking after him, and I give him. And obviously because he's new and we all love him, I give him a bit of a buy on that. On Xhaka's performance. So I mean the thing is, I guess it's how you evaluate the roles that the players are being asked to play, and we can only guess on those things, right? But Xhaka is absolutely definitely supposed to be the deeper of the two. I want my deep lying midfielder to complete 97%, even if not all of those are like line breakers or splitting defenses open. I don't expect or even particularly want Xhaka to carry the ball. I want him to find Partey and Smith Rowe really at a minimum, or the fullbacks going forward. Or if not, if he can't do that, just don't give it away, because if you give it away in the area of the pitch he plays in, you're pretty fucked, quite frankly. So that's kind of what I expect from him. And in terms of what I expect from Xhaka, I thought this was a superb game from him. I really did.
Agreed, yes.
And I guess as well, maybe I'm more inclined to think that because maybe I feel like I'd been unfair. I still don't think generally, but in the context of this game, I'd written a piece a couple of weeks ago where I kind of wondered, can Xhaka be like the condiment? Can he fade into the background very nicely so Partey can do all the big exciting stuff? And I guess I still feel like that overall, but actually based on this game, that's quite unfair. He did quite a bit, not a load more than that, but do you know what I mean? Like he wasn't like a shrinking violet. In this game, he was kind of firm in his actions and what he did, without, I think, doing that thing where he wants to completely take over. Like I guess essentially, I think Xhaka really, really did what I consider and what I think his job to be, and he didn't go mad and have like a funny 5 minutes because Partey's execution wasn't there. He was just very solid. He was just a bit of an anchor. And I didn't panic when he had the ball. I didn't panic with his positioning or anything like that. I just think he did a really firm, like 7 or 8 out of 10 job. Whereas Partey was a little bit more up and down than that. And so I guess given my estimation of both their roles, I thought Xhaka played his to a T.
Yeah. Paul, I know you want to weigh in on this, and I'd really like to obviously hear what Clive has to say too. So do you want to do a quick bit or give it the full gusto after Clive? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick bit. Like Tim covered a lot of what I wanted to hit there. There's a differentiation in the two roles because we have a tendency to compare the two of them, but they're working out, and it varies a little bit by game, what their balance is and what the differentiation is. We've seen a game where Xhaka stands to Partey's left, and he's kind of proactive and pinging them up the pitch, etc. when it's laid off to him. This was a game in which he sat a little deeper, as Tim alluded to. He'd fall between the two centre backs to play it out, ping it up to Xhaka, who was further upfield and was the more progressive player. But as soon as you say he was the more progressive player, it sounds like he was the better player. And I just think Xhaka had a really good game. Dropping into the left back spot to progress it, dropping between the centre backs. They're finding a really nice balance. I thought Partey had a poor game for him, but I really like him and what he brings. And even in this game, he's a force. And I wouldn't want anybody else standing in the middle of that midfield against United, against Pogba, against those guys. Those are two beefy midfielders we have there who don't take no shit from nobody. And Xhaka can stay a little calmer because Partey's there. Maybe it'll take away the red mist tendencies with him. I mean, he got his heel stamped and stayed cool, so that was something. I just think we got to look with new eyes in terms of the role for Xhaka. I watched this video at the weekend, which was fascinating. It's Johan Cruyff, I retweeted it at one stage, talking about how Holland played with a 3-4-3 or 4 at the back, and how he played with Barcelona and Pep. And holy shit, you can see, you kind of think of Arteta stealing his ideas from Pep, but you can see about halfway through the video, he starts talking about the midfielder dropping deep or dropping into the left back position, and he's drawn it up on the board, and you can't help but think, oh, that's why he's putting Xhaka there. He's got more space, more time. He's got his angles, blah, blah, blah. The David Luiz position and the role and why he has space and why he can progress up the pitch from centre back. And you just start seeing the thinking goes beyond Arteta or Arteta with Guardiola. There's a whole logic there with that whole left back thing, with why the 3-4-3, like Cruyff is talking about the 3-4-3 as an attacking formation, and you begin to understand how Arteta envisaged us playing. It didn't work out. We never got to it being an attacking formation, but it's very, very interesting. I'll retweet it after this. There's various things you'll see in there. Oh, okay, that's where he's getting it from. There's a whole lineage here of what he's trying to do, and the Xhaka role is covered quite well in terms of playing deeper and what his role is versus the other midfielder.
I am curious what the full gusto would have looked like versus the quick addition, but I still profited from your wisdom there, and I appreciate it. Clive? Well, no, it was great. Look, it's great. I am confused as to what the full gusto would have sounded like versus the quick addition. I got feelings.
Addition. I got a lot of feelings, Elliot, and you don't understand my feelings.
I am literally just a thriving, walking ball of feelings at all times. You don't have to explain it to me, buddy. By the way, I have to laugh, Paul. You know, when you described the sliding tackle that I think Tim correctly identified as from the Spurs game, the Mustafi one. Like, I thought what would have been hilarious, I mean, they would never do it, is if the Arsenal social media team announced Mustafi leaving by showing a video of him sliding into the picture and just continuing to slide out of the picture and saying, like, Mustafi has slid out of the club. Like, he's just slid right out of the club. Like, that's how I picture him leaving the club.
I found my tweet, by the way, and sadly it turns out to be the Bournemouth game.
Oh, so that's a shame. Well, anyway, it's still pretty funny.
I was completely wrong. I steered you wrong. I'm still talking, aren't I? I was only going to be quick, and now yet here I am still yakking away.
The good news is that Clive wasn't sure what he was going to say, so he's now had plenty of time to come up with it. Clive, let's move on and talk about the weather tomorrow in London. No, I'm kidding. The midfield. Is there enough meat on the bone, my man, for you to give us your insight on the midfield? Because before we get out of here, I still want to talk about the Cedric performance and the news for tomorrow. Because as you have indicated in our chat, Aubameyang, Xhaka, Tierney all training today. I think that is what you call a good sign. But yes, please educate us further on the midfield situation.
Right, so every game context. What's the context of this game? The last time we played them, we beat them, and who was the man of the match? Partey was, right? So they made an adjustment straight away. So they put Bruno onto Partey, if you watch the game. And they also did something which I didn't expect. They started with a 4-2-3-1. They put Pogba on the left and not Rashford, and put Rashford on the right. And so what are they doing really? They were letting us come out on our right-hand side. And they tried, lots of teams focus on the Bellerin holding link, right? So it's easier for them to get goal scoring situations from that side, shooting off your right foot, or you switch it to your striker on the right-hand side. So you see the switch there. So they really try to press that right back situation. So let you out, but only down that side, goes into Bellerin trigger. So, and obviously Partey's the right centre back, right? So what's the thing is, give it to Bellerin, into Partey, Partey tries to get out. If he gets out, great. We see the goal that Aubameyang scored against, I can't remember now, the left-footed shot. Bang, goal. If he doesn't get out, gets trapped, then of course we're in transition straight into Rashford. And that happened on a couple of occasions, but we did really well to recover the ball. So what Arsenal did quite smartly was they pushed Smith Rowe into that side. So rather than having a triangle getting out, they made it a diamond getting out on that right-hand side. And that's the trick. That's why I don't know if it happened by design or just Smith Rowe being clever. And you know what? That kid is so clever. You know, his brain's well ahead of his body. And he created that connection. And we started getting out that side. You remember Pepe going down that side, Smith Rowe going down that side. And so they really tried to load in on our right back and our right centre mid. And this is where Holding, this was one of my favourite games. You hear me talk about problem solving. You see Holding go long over the top, little drift pass over the top. Rather than go to Bellerin every single time, which he does quite a lot, he drifted a couple over the top first go. And that's good. That discourages the press. You see what I mean? It stretches it out. And so they targeted on that area. And that's okay. Every now and again, you're going to get your best players targeted and marked and stood on. Bruno didn't play well. He was crap. Right? He was absolutely crap. He didn't do anything apart from dive around. So he sacrificed himself to stop our man from progressing the ball.
He struck one hell of a free kick, by the way. We should just mention that David Luiz may have saved from being a goal.
Yeah, but he didn't do anything in open play. Nothing in open play, right? So he didn't do nothing. And so this is the thing why I was so pleased with Xhaka was, if you take out the main man, the other guy best play well. And he did. Do you see what I mean? And so Smith Rowe and Xhaka were able to problem solve the fact that they targeted our right-sided area. So on the Discord, it was Bellerin and Partey looking a bit dodgy, could have played a couple of dodgy passes. Well, they were targeted. They were literally targeted and pressed off the ball and outnumbered. And so when we have to problem solve by adding superiority on that side in Smith Rowe or switching to the left-hand side, which we did, we moved Xhaka in second half and progressed up the left a lot more and destabilised them. Rashford ends up coming off the pitch because he's on the wrong side of the pitch with him. He's disgruntled. Everyone's talking about his performance. He was just a victim of the tactics. The victim of being on the wrong side, shooting off on the right side when he doesn't like to do that. He's got no muscle memory, victim of the tactics. And so, yeah, every game has its context. But the good thing is we solved the problem. We solved it. We got out. And then we flipped our play to the left-hand side and had our 20 minutes golden period where we absolutely battered them. So whatever they brought to the show, we got around it. And so why I was so pleased by this game, and we have a sustained way of pressing, a sustained way of exiting with smart players that are joining and connecting, and that's great. So we'll see another day when Xhaka gets targeted. We've seen that before, haven't we, really? So,
sadly, yes.
On many occasions. And then it's up to Partey to be available and show his feet, and then break from that area. So a really, really good tactical game, which we didn't lose and could have easily won.
Yeah. And, I want to just pick up on one thing you said right there at the end, that we didn't lose and could easily have won. Look, I like, and from the tweet I referenced earlier, we're not playing like assholes. When you go and try to win games, you are going to struggle sometimes to keep clean sheets because you're putting more pressure in the attacking half in the final third, trying to win. I don't mind us giving away a couple of chances to United in exchange for trying to beat United. I like seeing us take 17 shots. I like seeing us have 80% possession at the beginning of the second half and pressing them to the point where they, counter-pressing where they can't get out of their defensive third. I like seeing us have the ball in dangerous areas and causing problems for the opposition, forcing them to solve problems. And sometimes they are going to solve the problem. They'll get their chances, and that's fine. I am a person who likes that type of football. Now, I understand that there are people that prefer defensive football because they don't want to see us conceding chances, but we kept a clean sheet here anyway. I think during this period where we've transitioned to be a more attack-oriented team, we've managed to do it without totally crumbling at the back. And I think, Tim, I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a chance, since you are a Brazilian correspondent, to praise David Luiz, who I think we've all had some questions about. I think you in particular have some apologizing to do, having criticized the selection of David Luiz rather than Gabriel. Although, to be fair, that's Brazilian for Brazilian on Brazilian love, which is fine. And quickly, I don't think we need to analyze the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper analysis is not really interesting to me, but Bernd Leno, look, all you have to say, I know a lot of people wanted Martinez to stay instead of Leno. Martinez is doing great too, but Leno has saved us points, period. Yep. When there's a critical save he has to make in a game we've played well and it would be heartbreaking to lose it, he makes a save. That fingertip around the post is sensational. So enough said about Leno because I don't think you need to go into it. But do you want to apologize to David Luiz and praise the center back?
No. I'd say about Leno, I think you're right. I do think he's gone up a level this season. And I was thinking about this the other day. You could make a very solid case that Leno and Martinez have been the two best goalkeepers in the league this season so far. Just a bit of food for thought. On the defending, the defence, I wasn't enormously against the selection of David Luiz. I kind of said it as a sop because I made the mistake of saying on Twitter that I think Gabriel might have made one or two mistakes, and I think a few people hit the translate button on that and read, I hate Gabriel, I think he's an absolute disaster, I hope terrible things happen to him, and every other defender that has ever played for Arsenal is miles better and has never made a mistake. You know how Twitter is. And so I kind of said as a sop for that, like, I probably would have still selected Gabriel for this game over Luiz, but I didn't feel strongly about it. I think focusing on the defending is really interesting and why Arsenal are defending better. And actually, I don't think it's an awful lot to do with the defenders or the centre backs. I think Rob Holding's been perfectly solid and consistent, and Leno's been a bit more than that. But really, like the composition of that defence has changed constantly. We've had lots and lots of change in there, other than Holding. And I think the reason why we're defending better is really simple. Is first of all, we're spending more time attacking, and you guys referenced that on the instant reaction pod as well. If you're attacking teams more, it stands to reason you spend less time defending. But really, I think what's happened is this is yet another thing that Smith Rowe has changed for the better. He hasn't just changed the way we attack; he's changed the way we defend, because essentially what was happening is we used to have 3 centre-backs and 2 centre-mids. Now we have 2 centre-backs and 3 centre-mids. And basically there's just less stress on the defence. I think it's that simple. And when you've got Smith Rowe, having 7-6 ball recoveries per game, pressing, winning the ball back, and also making himself available so that we don't give it away so often. So there's just a bit more fluidity to our game. He's just been like a bit of polyfiller, really, for the team. He's just filled in a lot of cracks by doing a lot of actually quite simple stuff. And one of the things that impresses me most about his game is the simplicity in it. And therefore that's why I think we've been defending better. Also, I think we need to look at the opposition that we've played in this time. So Brighton, West Brom, Newcastle, Palace, none of those teams fantastic in attack. all right, we kept Man United out, but United have one goal this season against the top six plus Leicester, and that was in a game they lost 6-1. United aren't scoring in these games. They're being a bit cagey and cautious because of what happened to them in that Spurs game. So I think it's possibly too early to say we're absolutely transformed. Or I don't know, well, maybe by the level we were at, we are. But there'll be stiffer tests to come in that respect, I think. But not to take anything away from David Luiz, I thought he had a perfectly decent game. So did Rob Holding. I don't think that's why we're defending better, though. I think we're defending better because we've got more purpose. We're pressing opponents higher up. We're giving more of a problem in midfield, and we've just got the ball in interesting areas a little bit more.
Yeah. I think this gives me a chance to then wind this all the way back to the transfer window at this point now. Is everybody okay with that as a final moment here? Because
sure,
it lets me reference the Cedric performance in a positive way, I might add, Paul, but then also folding that into the decision to move Maitland-Niles out on loan. I think there is sort of a hysteria about squad depth that I have just never bought into. You are very rarely going to win the same things if you have to depend on your third choice something or other that you are going to win if you have your first choice. I mean, ultimately, if we lose Tierney for the next 20 games, we will not be as good as if we have Tierney for the next 20 games. Not that there are 20 games, so that would be even weirder. We'd be losing him for some preseason games, I guess. You're not going to be as good if you lose Thomas Partey. We have seen that, God knows. So I think the point is you need to have some depth. You need to have players you can use who can put in a performance. But the amount of depth, I think there's a little hysteria to. And what Cedric has shown is that he can be an option to start at right back and start at left back and put in creditable performances. And that's a big improvement from where we were with him and where I was with him, admittedly, until recently. But I think there is this sense that you need a million players at each position. There are people, I am currently debating with them on the internets, thinking that letting Maitland-Niles go without bringing in a left back is a mistake. Because, well, what are we going to do if Tierney's injured? You've got Cedric, but if Cedric has to play at right back, if Bellerin's injured, then you don't have a left back. Well, first of all, yes, that's right. If both of our starting fullbacks are injured, we will be in a less good position. And if we had 7 players for every position, that would solve the problem. Hooray. Well, here's the problem. I mean, what do you do about the fact that these players are routinely not even making it into match day squads? You are not going to have a backup right back and left back on the bench every game. You're at a point where you're saying you should keep players who most games won't even make the bench. I just don't think that's sensible. You send Maitland-Niles out, you increase his value, you sell him in the summer for something approaching $20 million. That's sensible. You leave him here as an emergency fullback backup that the manager doesn't really want to use, and he's not even making most match day squads, and he makes 4 appearances. I don't see it. And, it just occurred to me in my own head through no prompting that we also have Chambers for right back backup. And it definitely wasn't Clive typing it into the chat. It was definitely my brain that thought that up. So, Paul, this is a long ranting way of saying, look, you now have Cedric as a backup if Tierney's unavailable, and Cedric as a backup if Bellerin's not available. If Tierney's playing and you want to start Cedric, you can do that. If for some reason you don't have any of them, you can play Chambers at right back. You can play Saka at left back. And they say, you can't play Saka at left back. You got to start him at right wing. He's too good to play. Of course you don't want to. It's your emergency solution. And if you have to play him there, you play Pepe and Martinelli and Aubameyang, or Pepe and Aubameyang and Lacazette. Or you play Xhaka at left back, depending on the game. Or Gabriel at left back. Another thing that I just thought of out of my own head that wasn't typed into the chat. So,
or Gabriel Magalhaes, depending on which Gabriel you meant.
I literally just said that, you non-listening... anyway.
No, but...
Not listening.
I thought maybe you meant Martinelli.
But... Gabriel Martinelli. Yep, you know what? That's right. Could have been either. Anyway, long story short...
Yeah.
This was meant to be your chance to say how great Cedric did, and that do you agree that we don't need 7 choices backing up every position, and that it's okay to let one guy who's playing well be your solution at a couple positions, and then the guy behind that be an emergency solution?
Look, I could go either way on it, but I'm going to go your way because I think the bottom line is what Arteta is doing in this window is he wants the fresh start. Things are going well. The vibe's good. He wants the players that want to be there, that get it. that are part of the plan going forward to be there. And Ainsley Maitland-Niles, I think we can all work out in the last couple of months, has gone from somebody who seemed to be getting with the program to someone who clearly hasn't got with the program, who, like, he does have abilities and skills, and yet he's basically been off the radar for a couple of months here. So something's not right. He hasn't kind of knuckled down. He hasn't become part of the plans. He's not, it shouldn't be Cedric who's starting these games at left back. It should have been Maitland-Niles. What the fuck? So, and it's not a lack of talent with Maitland-Niles. So what is it? Well, I think we know what it is. He's not serious enough about his football in some form or other. And I think Arteta wants a fresh start. So I could go either way. I think we could run into a little bit of a challenge by not having cover for Bellerin, who's, depending on whether you think he's a little out of form or he was just in the red zone, so Arteta was resting him a little. But, we got two starting fullbacks who have injury concerns. And we got Cedric, who can play on either side, but he can't play on both sides at the same time. So, yeah, we could use Gabriel Magalhaes on the left. We could use Chambers on the right, but we don't want to because it changes how we play. So, for a loan fee for Maitland-Niles, I'd keep him if he was building his profile within the squad and he was becoming a player for us, and next season he'd push on, but he's going backwards. And so I think it's time, and I think it's time for him. And Arteta wants, he wants to go from the situation he's just had, which nearly kind of took him down, of too many people, too many bad vibes, too many people pissed off. He wants a core team who know they're going to play in this game or the next game, all motivated, all there for the push, wheat from the chaff, all that kind of shit. So it's time with Maitland-Niles. I want him to go off. I want him to discover the cold realities of Premier League football and have to go and make a name for himself somewhere and realize it's not just him and Arsenal that have a little challenge. It's him and football, and that he really knuckles down and goes for it. He should have fancied the battle with Bellerin, and he should have gone for Cedric's spot within this squad. It's ridiculous that Cedric starts at left back ahead of Maitland-Niles. And I mean, Cedric has proved he's well up to it and he's doing a great job, but that wasn't clear before Cedric got to play at left back. That should have been Maitland-Niles' spot.
Yeah. It's funny because I tend to take a very particular view of a situation and sometimes get tunnel vision for it. I don't know if anyone's noticed that. No. But I do think it is fair to look at Maitland-Niles. Oh, if we kept him, it's just Tierney has an injury track record, and if something happens to him and Cedric has to play for Bellerin and then you have to use Maitland-Niles and you don't have him, suddenly you're in an emergency. But yes, if you're down to your third choice fullback at one side or the other, you are in an emergency situation. Would it be better at that point to have Maitland-Niles? Sure. How do you balance those equities? Do you keep a young player at the club, knowing that most games he won't even make the match day squad, just as an emergency solution in case you're down to your third choice left back or right back? I don't think that's fair to the player. I don't think it's smart from an asset protection standpoint. And I just don't think it really makes a healthy decision in the interest of anybody involved. And I would certainly question, as you pointed out, if the manager clearly doesn't trust the player, you might as well just go with the emergency. So it's how many games is it going to be where you're down to your third choice fullback? This is Arsenal. I shouldn't tempt fate, but you get my point. I think we can sort of wrap it up there, except to say that there is a game tomorrow. And Tim, given that there's a game tomorrow at Wolves, maybe not in the best of form, but certainly a team that can hurt you, a lot of interesting choices to be made by the manager. I think he should rotate. I think some players look tired. Center back is an interesting one. Gabriel's back. Certainly hasn't done anything wrong where he deserves to be dropped. But the current center back pairing has played well. Cedric certainly deserves to keep a place, but will it be for Bellerin with Tierney back in training? I don't think Martinelli looks like he's going to come back in. I think Xhaka would probably do it, but does Aubameyang go right back into the team the way Pepe's been playing? Is it in place of Lacazette? So suddenly, and does Smith Rowe, who you want to be careful with, maybe step out and we get an Odegaard full start here, who we got a little cameo of for 8 8 sort of trivial minutes against United, for the first time, it feels like there's real choices for Arteta to make where you're not going, well, which terrible player should we play in this position? It really feels like he's got hard choices to make for players who have made themselves selectable, if that's the right way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were saying this, weren't we, about, the likes of Pepe and Willian a few weeks ago. We're going to need them, whether we like it or not, whether we want to see them on the team sheet or coming on as subs, that is going to have to happen. And Pepe's certainly keeping up his side of the bargain. I'd argue that Willian had a good 45 minutes against Manchester United as well. I think he played well. So yeah, absolutely. It's options, and we're going to need that because the schedule this year, I know we talk about it, but I'm not sure we fully absorb what it's really like this year. Not only have we had a month shaved off the season, but there's no pre-season as well on the back of that. And really that's, even before all of this, I think there was a very strong question as to whether too much football was being played. And so, in this, particularly this season where it's really squeezed, you've just got to. And I know you referenced that earlier in the pod, that usually strong teams are the ones that keep things together the most in terms of their starting 11, but it's just not possible this year. And,
no, I agree.
And I think in terms of team lineups, you've got to take it over much more of a 4-5 match kind of look at it. So when we look at lineups, we've got to be thinking about that. And the best thing we can really say at the moment is we don't have to rush any of those players back. I'm not as worried. I'm still not ready to proclaim Cedric the saviour as yet, which is maybe to do with my own pride as much as anything. But I said earlier in the pod, right, I think Aubameyang's been overly criticised this year, largely because people are expecting him to do things that he's never done before for some reason. I think that it's almost like Theo Walcott syndrome. Once you sign a new contract, people really expect you to do other things, which I suppose is not entirely unfair. But with so with this game, I wasn't as worried about playing without Aubameyang because of the way Pepe had played. And I'd say the same this time. I'd say, well, okay, look, if Aubameyang's not quite ready, what a player to have on the bench if we need him. And similar with left back, I'm not as worried. After Maitland-Niles' performance at left back against Crystal Palace, which I think I think I'm right in saying, is that the last time he's played for Arsenal? I can't remember if he played any of the cup game. He literally signed his Arsenal death warrant with that performance. And after that, we're thinking, oh God, how do we ever play without Tierney? But Cedric has come to a point where it's like, okay, if we're without Tierney for this game, we can get by. It's okay. It's not ideal, but it's not as suboptimal as it felt a couple of weeks ago. So I'm quite relaxed about the lineup, to be honest. I think it's the same at centre back. I haven't been massively flustered about who Partner's holding. I wouldn't be massively flustered if Holding came out and was rested for a game. I don't think he will be, but if he was, I wouldn't panic too much about that. The only area at the moment I'd still have some worry about is central midfield. I still think we're light on quality there when you take away Partey, and I don't think Xhaka and Ceballos is a good mix, even if they're not bad players. That's the only. Partey's the one where I really think, we really can't do without him. It was Smith Rowe until we brought in Ødegaard, so I guess I'm quite relaxed about the lineup. And the other thing to take into account, just finally, is how many players can you get away with who aren't 100%? That's the other thing, because sometimes a manager, if they've got a really important player who's at about 90%, 80% fitness, they might think, okay, I can get away with that. But if they got 2 or 3 players like that, usually you don't play them all. You think, okay, I got to pick one. So, for example, I'd be shocked if Tierney and Aubameyang and Saka all start this game. I can't see that.
And I can help you because Tierney's been ruled out. So
okay, well there you go. But even if Saka and Aubameyang. Well, I guess Saka was only out for one game and Aubameyang wasn't an injury, so maybe we might see those two. But I guess this is a really long, rambling way of saying I'm pretty relaxed about it, which is a nice feeling.
Yeah, I mean, Saka, Aubameyang, Mari, and Ceballos back in full training. Tierney out, and you do worry. The only thing I'll say is the Tierney thing is stretching on a while now, and it's just the kind of thing when these injuries linger to this extent. There's a part of me that says, Is there an underlying issue here? But I don't want to leap to the concern trolling about that. I just hope that it's I hope that it's just them being extra cautious with important games coming up and knowing how valuable he is. It will be interesting to see what we do in central midfield because with Ceballos back, one of Xhaka or Partey you would think would be in line to get some rest. I don't think any of us want to see us start a game without Thomas Partey, but there's important games coming up. Maybe this is the one we look at and say we can get away without him. None of them are easy, and I'm not saying this one will be. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do. So, Clive, with that having been said, I guess the question now is just the final question. How do you evaluate this transfer window? We get Odegaard in to help spell Smith Rowe and have a look at him with, maybe an eye towards buying him in the summer. Who knows? We clear a lot out. The Ozil situation is over. Kolasinac, Mustafi, over. Willock loaned out, maybe with an eye towards creating some saleability there in the summer. Same with Maitland-Niles. It's all just starting to shape up to position us in the summer to be able to rebuild this squad from a more healthy standpoint. So how do you feel we've done in a window that was largely about moving players out rather than bringing players in?
Yeah, you've nailed it there. We've positioned ourselves for a bit of work, less work in the summer on some occasions, and potential squad growth and development and understanding about players' positions, etc. So I think Eddie's done a fantastic job, but the only thing we don't know is how much it's cost us to do it. Right? We've had to, and some of these we potentially have to pay people off or subsidise some wages, or we're not sure of the financials. So I still think we are paying for ills of the past and keeping people too long and tanking their value. Right, so these decisions got to be a lot sharper going forward, and it's just strange how we're quite sharp on the kids and not sharp with the experienced guys with their smart agents that say they're going to sign and they don't sign and end up walking out the door for nothing or with a golden envelope. So we've still got some work to do about how we control our contracts and manage our contracts and really understand the ceiling of people and when they should go, when they should be backfilled. I'm just looking online and I've just seen Brighton. I've just signed a guy called Moses Saido, and he's like basically his Pasuma's replacement. They've got him in £4 million. They're going to play him all through the this half of the season, give him some time, and Basuma will go in the summer. They're already ready to go. We've got to do a lot more of that type of planning rather than scrambling around. But we're scrambling mode right now, and we've done it. And Eddie's done it. And we weren't sure about him. The last two windows have been our best two windows in regard to reshaping this squad. And so the rail factor's gone. And so now what we do in the summer is going to be really interesting to see who stays, who goes. Will Luiz get a contract? What's going to happen with Willian? Will we buy into it a little bit longer? Will we say, you know what, time for an exit? Odegaard might stay, and that role's gone for you, mate. We're gonna buy somebody younger in one of the wide attacking roles, or buy a centre forward because Lacazette's going. So the real rebuild is ahead, but I'm pleased we're going in a direction which is more recognisable. We're not holding these people. We can't much longer anyway. So we know the rebuild is coming and we're not shying away from it. So 30,000 foot looking down, it looks quite good. There's a balance sheet there to come out, and I think we'll see that shortly, how much money that we've wasted in these contracts. But it is what it is. You can't look backwards, only look forwards, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think it is ultimately, I mean, look, there's one more player we could move out, and that would be Willian, and that'd be great. That one's not going to happen. And again, we didn't really mention it much. He was pretty good against United. Tolerable. So credit to him. But we do have Wolves tomorrow. We will have an instant reaction pod after that. Maybe do something live pre-match real quick to just sort of analyze the lineup and get hyped about the game, because we haven't done that in a while, and that would obviously be free for everyone. But if you would like to sign up for our Patreon, I just want to emphasize that I know it's been a tricky year for people, and if it doesn't work for you, great. If you do it, that's also super appreciated. The point is that we really do work our asses off to try to make sure this is a great pod, and then also to make sure on the Patreon side we make it feel like value with the scouting videos and the rewatches and the instant reaction and the things that we do there. So hopefully everybody feels they are getting, if not good content, enough content, because we all know quantity is just as important as quality, and we strive to live up to that mantra. Again, no talking about shaving privates today. But as it is February, we will have a new Manscaped thing that you'll be hearing about on a subsequent pod. So delighted to have you here. And if you want to support us on Patreon, we would really be delighted to have you there. And it's just tremendously appreciated and allows us to just keep on rolling with all of this great Arsenal content. So Paul's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo.
Yep. Okay. That was with conviction.
Considered.
Tim's on Twitter at Roberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Clive's on Twitter at Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Got to get Scott back into the fold too, but the way the fixtures have lined up, it's just been hard to connect on stuff with him, but he's got some stuff planned that we will be doing as well. So we love you. There will be more tomorrow and every day, as it feels like right now. Once again, they are trying the fitness of the players as well as the podcasters. So we'll see how that goes. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Wolves 0.